Hello. I have been being asked a ton of questions as to what I think the best prep for a contest raid would be, what thoughts are for going into the next contest raid. We believe it to be crota. This is me just going to be talking completely off script. I don't have anything in front of me. I'm going off the top of my head. In the background will be some Root of Nightmares Day 1 gameplay. If you want to watch it, it's just going to be playing there. And this is just going to be me talking about what I think is the best way to prep for a contest raid, as well as some concerns that people have with Crota Zen being possibly too easy. So first we're going to delve into Crota Zen being too easy. A lot of players who came to the game in D1 around Taking King, and at that point in time, Crota Zen was already being able to be soloed. When Crota Zen first came out, It was rather difficult. It was Destiny's second raid. People didn't know what they were getting into. Weapons were not as powerful as we have them now. So I want you to take a step back and think about how difficult that would be going into it for your first time and essentially not knowing what raiding even is at that point in time because raids were completely new to the game. As of now, we have completely different abilities, different weapons, things like that. They could change so much to make Crota actually relatively difficult. You could put a boss at the end of the first encounter. They could add a mechanic where you can't get your darkness up to times 10 while going through the lamps encounter. You could have a whole bridge section where you have to go back and forth across the bridge constantly in order to escort something over there, kind of like one of those bridge riddles where you have to bring a specific weight across the bridge and get a specific weight, but you're only able to carry so much. Like, there's a lot that they could do to make it relatively difficult, and the fact that you have to run it twice on contest mode, I relatively think that it could be a very well done raid, especially since usually the D1 raids that are ported over are done exceptionally well. Vault of Glass still had the Vault of Glass feel, even though it's relatively easy now. Contest raid, I think, was relatively fun. King's Fall, they moved over. Who thought that War Priest was going to be the wall for most people? Like, I certainly didn't. I thought Golgoroth was going to be more tough, but that just shows an example of how difficult some things can be, and I don't think it gives it fair justice to just be like, oh, Crota's easy, I'm not gonna do it, it's terrible, it's gonna be ridiculous. Like, don't judge it that way. Let the raid speak for itself, let the day one speak for itself. I'm going to move into prepping for day ones here. The best way to prep, in my opinion, is to learn how to play a whole bunch of different subclasses. The better you are at adapting, the better you are going to be at a day one. Constantly running raids with your raid team isn't really practicing anything. You're just running a raid with people who know what to do. It's really hard to practice for something that you've never run before. The best way for you to really get that practice, in a sense, would be to run a subclass and run a character you don't normally run. Learn how to play it. Use weapons that you don't normally use. Heck, use only primaries and go do Riven legit and give it that, like, day one experience that you're looking for. That type of thing. Run low mans, 3-mans, duos, that type of thing. If you're not used to it, then you want to start doing that so that you can look at different ways to run encounters, different ways to do things, and not just the normal way that people are doing it, and this lets you look at things in different perspective, because running with your day one crew that you always run with really isn't gonna help anything. I believe that the only reason you should be running with a day one crew to just do a casual raid, if it's not master or whatever, is if you have new members. With new members in play, then you want to learn how they play, you want to learn their voices, you want to get used to them, so it makes more sense to run raids at that point. But if you're running with the same people that you've run with for years, there's absolutely no point. You're just running a raid to run a raid at that point in time, and it's really not going to teach you something new. It's not going to teach you how to do anything. At that point in time, you might as well just try to run a 3-man master raid, so at least you have the contest cap enabled, and then try to use some subclasses and other characters that you're not normally utilizing. Another thing that a lot of people tend to do before a new raid or a reprised raid comes out is bounty farm and building up bounties. And yeah, this will save you time and unlock your artifact quicker, but in reality, even with now that you can buy season pass levels, using those bounties and just kind of mindlessly going through them isn't really that important. It saves you, what, maybe 4 hours, and at least this time around, we have the raid in a week and a half. If you don't think you can get your artifact to the max level, or at least to the last line of it, in a week and a half, then it's even not, even the artifact isn't even that important for the raid. We had somebody come in who played the campaign for Lightfall, and didn't do anything else. And he's in this video you can see behind me here, and I mean, we placed 234th. It took us 5 hours to do the raid, something like that. Like, it's not that important if you're going for placement. It's not that important if you're wanting to finish it. Like, you should have other members of your team that are at that point. I don't think that you should absolutely need to bounty prep. If you have nothing better to do, go for it. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's not as important as you think it would be. Another thing to do is to get in tune with the game. Learn builds for multiple subclasses that you can switch between. Know what weapons do what, know what exotics are helpful in certain scenarios, know weakening effects, know something like, we didn't have high energy fire for Vow of the Disciple. We would have beaten it way faster if we did have it, we just didn't think about it. Know what weakening effects are. Most of the time, a lot of times we'll go into it expecting not to use Divinity for whatever reason, and we almost always use a Divinity. Divinity is a 15% debuff, while you could also stand in a well and get yourself I think it's a 25% buff. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry if I'm not. Whatever. No, just know that having one buff and one debuff is going to always help you in some format, whether that's a tether or a Divinity or a weakening grenade or some finishing exotic that'll weaken something. Have your Outbreak leveled up. Have Touch of Malice leveled up. Don't just avoid using a primary because you think that you can do it without using a primary weapon. I saw somebody who was doing Vow of the Disciple, and they actually refused to use Outbreak Perfected for the final stand when they ran out of ammo, solely because they didn't want to use a primary weapon. I'll never understand that logic. My logic is, you want to complete it, use what you have. Having 6 outbreaks is a really good thing, so you should probably default to it if you're running out of ammo and you don't have ways of generating ammo, whether using Aeons or the new platform helmet with Divinity, which should have a Warlock running that helmet because it absolutely makes heavy for everybody and it's freaking amazing. Unless they nerf it. I don't know what's happening next season. I kind of keep up with the leaks, but that's not the point of this video. Be as well tuned with the game as possible. Write stuff down if you have to. Have somebody with paint on the side if you need to label something just for that specific clear. You'll get a more solid method afterwards. Focus on what you need to do to clear the raid yourself, and then worry about metas and things like that down the road. Keep in mind that just because you saw one team clear it, let alone they do it first, they do it second, just because a team is using rockets and a Gallahorn or whatnot, does not mean that your team has to use rockets and a Gallahorn. If you guys are blowing yourselves up constantly with rockets, maybe linears will better suit you. Maybe running Whisper because jumping with Whisper is how you're supposed to use it now. That's a joke. Don't use Whisper of the Worm. It's not really that great. Hand cannons are getting a buff next season. Like, people are using Malfeasance to solo Nezarec right now. Malfeasance is probably going to be a decent weapon to have, even if you're not facing Taken. The fact that its burst damage works for Unstop and is just a generally pretty good hand cannon might be something to look into. I know personally I will have Outbreak, Malfeasance. I think I'm running a Hunter this time, so like having a Strand build with Radiant Dance Machines, Bait and Switch, Rockets, Snipers, Fusions, like just having a lot of stuff leveled up and at your disposal is a good thing. Possibly looking at each encounter too, having something for distance, having something for close up, and having something to actually nuke stuff right away. That's something to think about, like running a hand cannon for close range and kind of distance, running a fusion rifle for that close range stuff and possibly extra burst DPS if you run out of ammo, and then running something like a rocket or a linear for that great damage would be a loadout that I would use. Running something like 2 SMGs and a tractor cannon probably isn't gonna be the play for a lot of things, so just looking at your loadout and looking for things for distance and stuff like that is definitely something you should think about. Just to recap on everything quick, Crota's End, let the raid speak for itself. Don't just assume that it's going to be ridiculously easy just because you know that's how it is in Destiny 1 right now. It was difficult when it first came out because of our level caps. It'll probably still be difficult due to contests, the fact you have to run it twice, and all of the changes that they're going to add to it. The more that you can adapt, the better it's going to be. Get used to adapting. Run multiple characters. Are you a hunter main that only runs auto rifles and you want to complete a day one? Well, you better go get used to a Titan and start running some other weapons, because you're probably not going to be set on using an auto rifle all the time. The more stuff that you can run and be able to flip between and not complain about their jumping abilities, the better you're gonna be. Do you know how to shatter skate? Do you know how to well skate? They're not necessary, but they are movement abilities that can help you at something. You know how to sword skate with Titans, Lion Ramparts, and a sword? These are just things to think about. The more you can switch between characters and not be complaining about having to play a Warlock and having to play a Titan and you're just able to jump no problem, that's adapting to the situation at hand, being able to do multiple sets of callouts. If you jump from team to team to team and one team's using numbers, one team's using locations, one team's using ABC, and one team's making hamburger callouts, whatever, if you can switch to that really quickly, that shows that you're good at adapting and you will have a much better chance at beating the raid, whether you're placing or you're just completing it for your first time, because you can switch to whatever role needs to be filled. Prepping for day ones, bounties are kind of irrelevant. Don't run raids with your normal raid team. That's just a know what to do raid at that point. You're not prepping for anything. Do something to challenge yourself. You will find yourself being able to, again, adapt a lot better, and you'll actually feel like you're getting some type of practice in, because you're either facing more enemies at once, or you're capped at a level, or you're doing something that you're really not comfortable doing, which is where you are in a day one, because you've never been in that specific scenario before. Even a reprised raid, you might know the area, but you haven't been in the scenario with the current meta, current weapons, current super, whatever character you're on, because this is Destiny 2, which is different than Destiny 1. I hope that I covered a lot of you guys' questions and kind of my thoughts and processes through here. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. You can always come over to my Twitch at Gambit's Casino. I'm usually running some type of endgame PvE help and trying to help as many players finish raids or master challenges or grandmasters or something like that. And I'm happy to talk to you more about these thought processes and even some of my ideas for what raid challenges will be in the future, and I hope to continue providing content and helping you guys out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.